Partito, vai col Chuck.
Serata America, intervista a Leone 1 prima.
Un attimo. Buona.
Cinema per me è soprattutto uno spettacolo immenso.
Cinema thrives on the interplay of mythos, the stories we tell, and opsis, the spectacle, the imagery that brings them to life. In Sergio Leone's films, this duality reaches its apex. By deconstructing the mythos of the American dream's supporting narrative, converting it in a tale of disillusionment, and radically transforming its opsis, coming from his neo-realist experience, Leone's cinema becomes not only a scathing cultural critique of the myths that shaped America, but also a meditation on memory, nostalgia, and the human condition. The chemistry Leone builds between storytelling and visuals transcends cinema to become pure myth, timeless, and devastatingly human.
Io penso sempre di aver raccontato il mito, lo spettacolo contrabbandato da simboli, contrabbandato da accostamenti, anche attraverso questi personaggi estremamente realistici che invadono la nostra vita quotidianamente.
The United States is a relatively young entity compared to other countries and cultures. The traditions of Native Americans were overtaken by the mix of European colonizers over centuries, making it difficult to create a foundational myth for a country that was born into such a violent process. The closest cultural parallel to the ancient civilizations would be the frontier myth, with the Old West as one of its key iterations. The Manichaean struggle between good and evil, historically reduced to that between settlers and natives, became fertile ground for early American cinema. Yet, decades later, Sergio Leone would disrupt this narrative entirely. His works depicted America with a European gaze, more disillusioned and grounded. The standard shots of the classic Western are often long shots, emphasizing horizons as symbols of hope and glory, projecting toward a radiant future. There is almost never an inner look, so much so that even the settings are often magnificent exteriors, with green plains for optimism and grim deserts for despair, with space carrying figurative weight. Leone's westerns, on the other hand, became renowned for the close-ups and the focus on the characters' eyes and faces. These details humanize these anti-heroes, creating a subtler, deeper connection between viewer and character. The Dollar Trilogy achieves a suspended mythical quality, with its central figure, the man with no name, resembling an avenging angel, a near-divine force untethered from time and backstory. In contrast, the Time Trilogy exudes decadence and disillusionment. The titles chosen by Leone, which all begin with Once Upon a Time, despite Daikyu-Sucker being the only exception because of marketing reasons, evoke fairy tales, as if Leone were addressing his child self, enchanted by three grand dreams: the Far West, America, and socialism. Yet, each film utterly dismantles these myths.
Dato che io racconto delle favole anche se sono per grandi, ma favole, in realtà qualche volta diventa addirittura iperrealtà, quindi deve essere estremamente documentata e estremamente autentica.
In Once Upon a Time in the West, the railway, which has always been a symbol of American progress, becomes a marker of decline, representing in meta-cinematographic terms the death of the Western genre, but in ideological terms it is the rise of capitalism. Leone's archetypal characters reach their goals but pay steep prices: loneliness, death, or existential emptiness. Their stories culminate in isolation, their triumphs rendered hollow. Each of them, after the end of the film, will presumably become a ghost, an intangible figure condemned forever to myth. Daikyu-Sucker diverges sharply, depicting the metaphorical death of the revolutionary ideal. The two protagonists, Juan and Sean, embody the two souls of a more mature and disillusioned Leone. On the one hand, the materialistic and disillusioned peon; on the other, the revolutionary anarchist with a past as a true idealist. Dialoguing with each other, the two protagonists show us thesis and antithesis of Leone's thought.
The people that read the books, they go to the people that don't read the books. They put people and they say, the time has come to have a change.
Whose synthesis is perfectly reflected in the last scene of the film.
What about me?
Juan has lost everything, turned by Sean into the revolutionary hero, ending up disoriented and experiencing the same ideological bewilderment that Leone felt during these politically tumultuous years, disenchanted with Marxism and having seen its instrumentalization throughout the 20th century. Leone, by setting the film during the Mexican Revolution, critiques the cyclical nature of all wars and revolutions, reducing them to confusion and betrayal. The film, with its postmodern callbacks to Leone's earlier works, signals his intent to kill both the traditional Western and the one he had pioneered. Perhaps also by virtue of this, he decided to devote himself from here on only to making the film he had always wanted to make. Once Upon a Time in America analyzes, confronts, deconstructs and reconstructs the gangster movie. Every shot, every scene, every interaction between the characters is pure myth, pure cinema. Moving away from the Western genre, the last chapter of the Time trilogy is a reflection on memory and history. Seeing the characters first as children, then as adults and finally as elderly, allows us to experience the ability of cinema to enclose an entire life, immanent, in the space of a single film. But even more, Leone's skill here lies in being able to show us America's roots in the light of a fierce critique of the American dream, firstly narratively through Noodle's opium-induced visions.
Per me invece Noodles non è mai uscito da quel 1930 e ha sognato attraverso l'oppio proprio tutto il suo futuro.
Then, metanarratively through Leone's own idea of cinema and myth. Leone wanted to portray the opposite of the macho criminal's imagery made up of Al Capone-inspired Supermen, who ultimately emerge victorious from their epics. These gangsters are never presented to us as innocent, showing the moral flaws and the social cages in which they exist. In this universe, there are no victors, only survivors whose triumphs are overshadowed by their failures. Sergio Leone envisions America as a dream, both fragile and ferocious, a land of children. Through the lens of mythos and opsis, he captures not just the baseness of its landscapes, but the haunting void within its promises. Leone's America is not built on success, but on the quiet echoes of struggle, of trains that carry both progress and ruin, of heroes who live as ghosts, and of myths that endure because forever unresolved. In his cinema, the myths of a nation are not shattered but reframed, illuminated by the glint of a gun barrel, the flicker of a smile, or the fading notes of a harmonica. Here, America is a fable of contradictions, as magnificent as it is mournful, as eternal as the myths it cannot escape.